This episode of Cheat Codes, a sickle cell podcast, was made possible by Global Blood Therapeutics and is intended for educational and informational purposes only. Visit gbt.com to learn more.
What's up, Warriors? We're here with another episode of Cheat Codes, a sickle cell podcast with me, Dr. Z.
And me, Dr. C.
Dr. C, when we built this podcast, the vision had always been to bring together sickle cell physicians and sickle cell advocates. Let me tell you a story. So about 2 years ago, I was in Fort Lauderdale at a town hall for priapism, and I got to meet a bunch of male advocates for sickle cell disease. And you know, the thing about advocates is the male advocates, they're there, but there's not that many of them. There's a handful of them. There's a lot more female advocates, it seems like to me. Oh, but I met this group of male advocates, and we were doing introductions. We're going around the table. We're doing introductions. And I introduced myself. And there's a guy across the table from me. He stops. He's like, wait a minute. And I was like, uh-oh, I said something wrong. He's like, are you the Twitter guy? And I was like, yeah, I think so.
That's what we call him around here, too.
So he gets up. This guy across the table from me, he gets up. He walks around. He's like, I just got to come around and give you a hug, man. He walked all the way around the table. He gave me a hug, and he was like, thank you. And I'll never forget that, man, because, I put in a lot of time into social media, and I think back to that one interaction and how I just felt appreciated in that moment. But we've got that guy with us today, man. We got Blaze. We got Blaze with us today, and I'm so excited to have you here, Blaze. How are you, man?
Stop trying to butter my biscuit, man. I'm doing good, man. I'm having a great day. I'm excited to be on this podcast with the Twitter guy. I just want to contribute my piece, I know you had an amazing lineup of, advocates already on the show, So to be in that group, like I always tell, that is a very, very, elite group. So for me to be a part of those advocates is just, it says a lot to me. You know how you spoke about how that interaction made you feel, right? This interaction makes me feel like I'm doing something right, to just be a guest.
I appreciate that, man. No, I mean, I think that, one thing we don't recognize is all of us are in this fight together. And we talk about patients being in the back of the bus disease for patients. But, something we forget is if you look across the aisle at the back of the bus, the doctors are right there too, man. We're fighting with you guys just to get more awareness, more attention, more access. The fight, it's a street fight and we're in it together. But Blaze, man, I have a lot of things to cover with you, dude. Obviously you're an advocate and you fight for sickle cell disease nonstop. I want to know a little bit more about your story though, man. I want to know a little bit about, Blaze growing up. Who was Blaze growing up? Where did you grow up? How did that look? When did you recognize that sickle cell disease was going to be an important player in your life?
Okay, so this is the thing. I didn't really recognize how much it will alter my life until I was right at the point of approaching adulthood. So, me as a child, I knew I was different. I knew I had this disease where I needed to go to the hospital. I need to get blood transfusions. I need to take these medications. Okay, cool. That's my life throughout my younger days and my teenage years. I realized that it was going to impact me once I was about to graduate high school. Sounds crazy. It was because in high school, I had dedicated my time and life to ROTC. I was up early in the morning to get to school like 6. I was with drill team. I was with color guard. I was, earning all these badges and these mirrors, getting my uniform all star-studded and stuff.
Wow.
Right.
What?
Because I think, I'm about to go to the military, I'm color guard commander. I'm drill team commander. I'm, in my uniform, walking around sharp with my beret on, boom, right? I got my plan all that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the military. I'm going to get the military to pay for my schooling. And that's how my life is going to be. Ta-da, at the end, get a wife and kids. So
Yeah.
Senior year, got my uniform on. The recruiters are coming up to the school. They're recruiting. We want to see these people who've been boom, boom. So I'm here, my uniform on. I got it dry cleaned. My shoes are shiny. I got my facial hair all cut off. My cool.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to the recruiter. Yeah, man, it's amazing. You know, we can't wait to get you signed up. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. So we're just talking. I'm like, so my sickle cell is not going to be a problem. You know, that. He was like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, sickle cell. I was like, yeah, I have sickle cell.
Flag on the play,
Right,
traveling.
right. Got to rewind that back,
Yeah.
bring it all the way back. Sickle cell. He's like, yeah, you know, that disqualifies you from, you know, doing anything, you know. And so I was heartbroken because ninth grade, that's my plan, you know. 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, I'm just excelling, you know. You can get a ribbon for doing this. If I joined SGA, I became the treasurer just so I can get a ribbon to go on my uniform. You know, I was trying to get all the accolades up. You know, if you participate in this, you get a ribbon. You do this, you Saber Day. I got my saber where you get your sword handed to you by somebody important in your life. You know, wear it around. It's a real sword. You know, I was set. So he's like, yeah, no, that disqualifies you. So imagine me being an adult, right? I got all my plans mapped out. It's already mapped out. And then he's like, nah, we got to scratch all that. You know, that's not the life that you thought you was going to have. And so then I'm just confused because it's just like, I thought I was about to get ready to go to college. I thought I was about to get ready to go do this and do that. And I kind of, to this day, still live with that resentment in my heart, you know. When I see my peers, you know, in the military, I'm envious. You know, this is a part of jealousy that I live with. When I see, you know, my peers not living up to their full potential, if that makes sense. You know, people with able bodies not doing, people with able bodies not trying, you know, right now, if you're healthy, right, and you have a clean background, you could be a police officer, you could be a firefighter, you can go to the military. That's out there. You know, it's not just like, no, we're not taking any more police officers. We don't need these first responders. You can do anything if you have an able body, you know? That's one thing that I wish I had, you know, just the ability to wake up in the morning and be physically able. You know, I'm disqualified out the gate, not because I have a criminal record. My record is clean. I have nothing. Not because, you know, I don't have the desire. I have the desire. I have the motivation. Not because, you know, I don't want to. I do want to, but because I'm physically not able to do it. So there was a time where I was in denial. Man, I could do that if I wanted to. I could do that. And so I would get in the gym. I would start, testing my body, and I'm not able to. I had to come to terms with that. That is, I'm not able to do it. Of course, mentally, I'm going to tell myself I can do whatever, but my body has to follow me, and my body won't. That's how I grew up. And so then I had to come up with a plan B. And so then I started asking myself, what am I adamant about? You know? And throughout me having sickle cell, I had built so many relationships, just in the community and, with doctors and nurses and stuff like that. Like if I go to my hospital right now, I know everybody on a first name basis, oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing all right. I ain't seen you here in a long time. I've been healthy, that type of thing. So that's where I'm at now. But how I got into where I'm at now, I guess that would be a different question you would ask. But I just gave you the background on my youth.
Wow, man. No, that really sets the stage there. And I see Dr. Callahan looks like he's contemplating that story a lot.
No, I saw a young man in clinic, 18-year-old, the other day, and he was going through a rough time. And basically, it had just occurred to him that sickle cell is going to be this big part of his life, and that, he might die from complications of sickle cell. And he was having a hard time adjusting to that. And so, I mean, to hear this story where sickle cell took something you really wanted away from you, it kind of mirrored what I was talking about with this young man. And how did you transition from that? Because you could just be bitter and go down a dark path and probably make your sickle cell worse. And so how long did it take you to get over that and come up with plan B and move forward with plan B? And you maybe never get over it, but you get past it, I guess.
Well, like you said, I haven't gotten over it. I was bitter for a long time, like I said, but not bitter to the point where I'm like, having negative thoughts, but it was just like, dang, I always wondered about what could have been. Like I even have dreams now still about, dang, what would my life look like if it was just an alternate dimension where I didn't have sickle cell, I think it took some time. I would say probably about 5 years, because, I was just wondering what I was going to do, or how I was going to go about getting to the next step in life. So I had a friend. His name was Sean Salisbury. He passed from sickle cell disease, which is crazy that I'm doing this thing with you guys because his sister just passed 3 weeks ago, and they were like sister and brother, and
Both with sickle cell.
both with sickle cell. Yeah, one with SS, one with SC, and Sean passed in like 2015, and his sister just passed 3 weeks now. But Sean was telling me, "Hey man, come to camp, come to sickle cell camp, come to sickle cell camp," and I'm like, "Nah." Okay, so growing up, my family life was really rough. My mom struggled with addiction, so I wasn't getting the best care, out the gate because you have your parents that are supposed to take you to these appointments, and you're not making it to these appointments because your mom is struggling. So I always wanted to go to sickle cell camp as a youth. And there was a camp where you would be around other kids with sickle cell disease. You would meet and make lifelong friends. And so I wanted to go every year. Can I go? Can I go? It would always be, yeah, we're going to get you there. And I would never get there. And so when I became an adult and my friend was telling me to come be a counselor at camp, I didn't want to go because I had that resentment. I'm like, I wanted to go as a kid and experience it as a child, that fun, not feeling like an oddball, not feeling, what I'm saying, like I can't keep up because everybody there is dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with. He kept trying to convince me to come. And then I eventually was like, you know what, I'll come to camp. You know what, you want me to come so bad, I'll come. I came and I became a camp counselor. And so when I got there, I feel like it was a saving grace because even though I wasn't doing it as a child, I still was able to meet peers with sickle cell disease and develop and build those relationships. And I still was participating in the activities with the kids because I was their counselors, So I felt like that was a saving grace because that reintroduced sickle cell to me in a positive way, because we were dealing with me despising sickle cell because of what happened with me not being able to go to the military. So with camp, I was reintroduced to sickle cell in a positive light. Like, there is this community of people just like you where, they're having fun and they're not thinking about the negative stuff. Because if we were to just think about what could happen, we wouldn't be, focused on the positive things that are happening. So I became a counselor. Boom. The next year I come back, counselor. Boom. Third year I come back, boom, and I'm just meeting different people. I'm meeting kids that have aged out of camp now that I've built relationships with, know their parents, things like that. Still check on them to this day. They have my number, stuff like that. So that was sickle cell. That's how I got back on the good track with sickle cell. And so I was just thinking, this is before I decided to be like an advocate, because like I said, it was that before, and we gradually getting into me loving sickle cell again. When Sean passed, I was at home, I was in the bed, and my phone is always silent at night. It's always silent. This night, my phone wasn't silent. It was ringing off the hook, 3 o'clock in the morning. So I pick up the phone. I'm just wondering who is blowing me up, and it's his sister. She's telling me that he's not doing well. He's at Emory. And I just talked to him. Had just spoke. So this episode, it just went crazy through the course of the night. For me, just speaking to him before I went to bed to now me going to bed, and all of a sudden, I get down to Emory. The doctor came to us, with the saddest face ever, and they wouldn't let us in the room. So I knew something was happening. They say he aspirated. They say he vomited, but he choked on it and went back down the wrong pipe or something, and the acid from his stomach burned his lungs, and there was nothing they could do. Like, it was like mush, I guess. But then he went, and then after that, I just knew I couldn't stop being involved in sickle cell. That was the first person who I knew with sickle cell who just passed, who I had a great relationship with. And I feel like it happened for a reason, like, him getting me back to loving sickle cell, thinking positively of sickle cell, because I have sickle cell. I don't want to think negative of sickle cell, So when he passed, I just stayed the course. I didn't quit. I didn't stop. So I, like I said, I had built relationships by being a camp counselor at it's called Camp New Hope. It's here in Georgia. It's a camp for kids with sickle cell disease, and it's a part of the Sickle Cell Foundation of Georgia, where I work now. So I didn't quit. So with the camp director, I built a relationship with her, and I applied at the foundation, Sickle Cell Foundation of Georgia. And so I started working there in 2017, and I've been working there ever since. And I just hit the ground running, and I just been trying to be a part of everything that I could be a part of. And I think how I met you was I wasn't planning on submitting myself. I was just looking for other people with sickle cell to refer them. Like, hey, they're gonna fly you to Baltimore. You're gonna be on board. Boom, boom, boom. So I'm recommending other people, and I'm not putting myself down. And then the contact who I'm talking to, she's like, "Don't you have sickle cell?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She, "Have you experienced priapism?" I'm like, "Yeah." She was like, "Well, why don't you do it?" And I'm like, and I just decided to do it. So when I decide to do it, we go down to Baltimore, and I meet some people speaking on this board, and that was my first time, lending my voice to, like a trial. That was my first time. But from that, I created those relationships with the people who I talked to in the room. And so I feel like it came full circle, because you're not going to believe this, but it's funny. The lady who I met in that room, right? I do a poem. I'm not thinking much of it. I'm just, submitting my 2 cents on sickle cell. So the poem reaches Mike Mike, we talk about Mike. The poem reaches Mike. Mike sits right next to Jency at their little hub. So he was like, he's playing it on this computer. This is what they tell me. He's playing on the computer, and he's like, "Man, I wish I could get a hold of this guy." And then she's like, "I know him. His name is Blaze. Boom, boom, boom." So that's why I say it came full circle, because the thing that happened in Baltimore, me meeting her, if I had not decided to meet her that day, what I'm saying, then Mike would have never been able to put the two and two together. So after that, he reached out to me. Somebody reached out to me, and I ended up speaking in New Orleans. And like I said, I just kept going. I just didn't stop. So after I spoke in New Orleans, it was in front of like 200 people. And they were just like, "Are you going to be nervous? Are you going to be a part?" I was like, "Nah, I mean, I enjoy public speaking. So it's not really a problem where I would be like scared or afraid." So I did that in New Orleans, and then I did some other things. Then they wanted to sign me to a speaking program where I would just be speaking in different places and stuff like that. And then I overnight I just became an advocate. It just like, just happened. Yeah, it wasn't like I just was like, "Oh, I want to be an advocate." It was kind of just like, that's just how the dice or the cookie crumbled, or whatever you want to say. So yeah, so I've been a part of it ever since. And every time somebody asks me to do something, like, I be really getting overbooked, because I never tell people no or I can't do it. I always want to do and say as much as I can and reach as many people as possible. So when people come to me with opportunities, I never go, "Oh, I gotta look at my calendar," or "I gotta," what I'm saying, or "I gotta see," or "I gotta," it's always just, "Yes, I'll do it." Like when you did the podcast, I didn't know what I was doing today, or if I had stuff to do. I had some meetings today, had to move around, but I just wanted to be a part of it. I want to be a part of everything.
Yeah, thanks for moving them around.
Look, man, I got to tell you, what, it sounds like that this path was like fast. You became an advocate, and a big time advocate. And I'm not going to reveal names or company names here, but I was having a conversation with the CEO of one of the companies in the sickle cell space, and we were talking about how it's important to engage the community and this type of stuff. And he's like, it's people like, literally the CEO of this company says, it's people like Blaze who we want to be our voice. And in that moment, I was like, this guy made it, like like the C-suite is talking about Blaze, because there's something about you and how you deliver stories and information that's really unique. And you're right, your ability to speak in front of crowds is fantastic. I want to circle back though, Blaze, to something you talked about earlier in losing this warrior friend of yours, this blood brother of yours. And you talked about how it increased your resolve and your passion and your fire to do more and not stop and not quit. Man, the more that I'm growing close to this community, I feel like a lot of these sickle cell warriors around the world, around the country, are friends of mine now. And the more that that's happening, I'm realizing how much loss there is in this community. And it seems like we're losing warriors that I couldn't call friends before, that I can call friends now. We're losing them almost, like monthly, weekly. you know, when you have, as a sickle cell warrior yourself, man, I mean, that's got to be, I feel like as a whole, the sickle cell community needs like, I don't know, man, like debriefings and therapy from just that, just losing those people who you're so close to over and over and over again. And it's like a mirror because you're seeing a reflection of yourself in that story. How do you work through that, man?
Man, that's a tough question to answer, because it's like you close your eyes and another person is gone. You know, you spin around 3 times and another person is gone. Just the person we talked about, Jewel. We talked about how that was just like, wow. You know what I'm saying? Because it was just like, not to say that any life matters more than other, but it was just like she was out, you know, vocal everywhere, you know. And not to say sickle cell can't snatch anybody up in any given time, but it was just like crazy. You know what I'm saying? Because a Jewel is like the equivalent of like Shamanica, like a Tiana, like it's just like, you know, it's crazy. So when she, like a Lakia, like it's crazy. So when Jewel left, I don't, it's gonna sound crazy, but it made it like more real for me, because I know people pass left and right, but I'm like, Jewel, like, nah, that ain't happen, not Jewel, not Jewel. And so when it happened, I was just like, dang, like, you really can go at any time, even if you're on top of your health. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not saying like one life matters more than the other, but some people take care of themselves better than other people. That's just a given fact. You're a doctor, you know these things. So there's some people who see their people regularly, who are getting their checkups regularly. They see their pulmonologists. They see everybody regularly. And, like me, I just came from an appointment. You see when you're supposed to see them, you know what's going on in your body. When they posted about her passing, I was devastated. And then they said she had pulmonary hypertension. I was kind of like shaking in my boots, because that's literally what I was dealing with in the moment. So my oxygen saturation had been low. And so with my oxygen saturation being low, I wanted to know why it was low. And so my hematologist referred me to a heart doctor. So with me seeing my heart doctor, he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to get you a cath, because your pressure is kind of high." And so with my pressure being high, I'm like, "So what does that mean? Do I have pulmonary hypertension?" He was like, "Yeah, you have pulmonary hypertension, but we can, try to get it before it gets worse, and get you on some treatments so that we can, try to reverse the effects, I guess. Just try to get me out of the woods, get me back in a better position." So all I hear is, in my mind, I'm going to pass. Like, my pulmonary hypertension is going to go out of control. It's going to keep getting more pressure, more pressure, more pressure. My oxygen saturation is going to keep getting low. I'm going to have to start carrying around oxygen. And the next thing you know, I'm just going to be gone. That's what I heard. And so I'm super worried. Turns out I get the heart cath. He's like, "We got to do the heart cath because an echocardiogram and, all that stuff is cool. But we want to get something invasive so we can know, how bad the pressure is." So I get the heart cath and I'm super nervous. I'm thinking nothing but negative thoughts while they're getting me ready to, do this procedure where they go in through my groin, go all the way up to my heart and measure pressure.
And by the way, man, meanwhile, all of us are shaking in our boots because you're sharing the story on Facebook as you're going through it, right? You're like giving us updates.
I'm just stupid nervous. Man, I get the heart cath and it was like, "You don't have pulmonary hypertension." And I was like, "What you mean?" It was like, "You don't have no pulmonary hypertension, like none whatsoever." And I was just like, "Nah, that can't be right, because, this doctor just told me when he did this that I have pulmonary hypertension." He's like, "No, you don't have any. I just did the heart cath. I'm looking at it on the screen. You have no pulmonary hypertension. Yours is 15. He was like, "That's normal." I was just like, "Thank you, God. Like, thank you, Jesus." I was just so happy, because it was just like, man, I'm trying to tell you, I was getting my affairs in order. I was just like, I'm going to be out of here soon. And I wasn't even sad. I was just like, I was overwhelmed, but I don't fear dying. I just fear like not being around people I love anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, the act of my heart start beating or being in pain, like, that's not really, I always say this. Do you remember what it was like before you lived? No, you can't remember that. So how am I going to remember what it's like when I pass? Like, lights was on, lights was off. That's all. It's not like once I die, I'm just gonna be in excruciating pain. It's just literally over. It sounds weird, but that's how I always should be looking at life. Like, you don't remember what it was like before you was born. So how you gonna remember what it was like when you pass? So I don't fear death, but I just fear like my loved ones just being sad, really.
Yeah. Wow, man. That was heavy. That was a heavy conversation. But look, man, here you are. You're healthy.
Hmm.
You're taking care of your body.
Super.
You don't have pulmonary hypertension.
I don't have that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like it's a second part of the album, right? Now you feel like you get to start fresh, and you get to, it's like a second lease on life, right? You're getting your affairs in order, and you're getting ready for the end, but it's actually the beginning all over again, right? And now you've got this blueprint, right? Now you've got this blueprint. Now you're this advocate. You've got the ear of all the important people in the game. And they want to hear from you. They want to know what Blaze says. They want to know how Blaze can help them. What's next for you, man? Where's this going? How are you writing the story? What are you trying to change? How about let's start there. What are you trying to change?
I'm trying to change the way sickle cell is received by people. You know, a lot of people, even African American, even though it's an African American disease, don't know exactly what sickle cell disease is. You know, I feel like it's the stepchild. It's just like it's the oldest genetic blood disorder but with the least amount of breakthroughs. So it's like, how can something be older than everything else, but the effort is not, it's not there. So I want to just create, man, create and just change the perception of sickle cell. I want us to be on TV. We're never on TV. We're not in the commercials about sickle cell. People, that, but you always can turn on your TV and find out something about, every other disease. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like we don't get the notoriety, and I don't know why, but I kind of know why. But we're not gonna get into that. It's just crazy. And so right now, I'm just in the phase of creating. Like I told you, we talked about it yesterday. I'm not gonna say too much, but I want to create something for people with sickle cell, and I want people with sickle cell disease to star in it. And I want, us to just make a big wave. And I feel like with this first project that we're working on right now, it's a musical. It's going to be voiced by people with sickle cell disease. We're going to have a narrator on there, a doctor or somebody, we're going to talk about that. But yeah, I'm just excited for when it comes to fruition, when it premieres. I just want education. I feel like that's super important. And like right now, if I ask somebody, hey, what is sickle cell disease? I don't know. Like, I want people to be able to know exactly what it is without their brains hurting, or just like, for example, when a person has a baby, right? A baby has sickle cell disease. Let's say that, and you want to know, hey, what does this mean for my child? The doctor, like you said yesterday, I want you to know that I was paying attention. You spoke about how you're not able to get all this information in this amount of time. How you see a patient and you want to explain something to them, and you can't explain it all to them because the time, you just don't have that time. So that's why you said cheat codes. We went over that yesterday, right? Did we?
We did.
Cool. So
you were paying attention. I love it.
Right. So with the musical, I want somebody to be able to say, hey, what is sickle cell? What does that mean for my child long term? And the next thing you know, doctor can just go to this, pull this up, and it's informational, it's fun, and it gives you everything you need to know. So you can take that and you can pass that on to the husband. Hey, watch this. So this is what we know our child has to look forward to. You know what I'm saying? Not just, oh, it's a genetic blood disorder and it may cause your child some pain, and a parent is not going to be ready with just that little piece of information that they're going to receive in that doctor's appointment. They need something that they can look at. It's a visual, it's fun, it's not so dark. Because that's what you hear sometimes when you receive these, these words from these doctors, basically. Hey, your child's,
Yeah.
So I wanted something fun, informational, instructional, voiced by people with sickle cell, so it's more authentic, and I just want to go from there.
I can't wait to see
I love
this.
it, dude.
So how did you get into that? I don't think of the ROTC guys as writing poetry and musicals.
I used to write poetry as a kid. When it was introduced in high school, haikus and all types of stuff like that, just poetry. My English teacher, he got me really, really, really into poetry. So it was kind of always just like a hobby of mine. Like I do music on the side, and it's just a form of expression. One day I was just thinking about what I was talking about. How can people get this information, but in a fun way? Because sometimes you tone doctors out. Sometimes, you're watching a YouTube video and you tone it out. You want something that is going to stick with you and something that you can feel good about. So I just started writing. And then before I know it, I had a whole musical and I had characters that I drew and I just pitched it. And then when I pitched it, they loved it. And then after that, they gave the green light. And then we just started working.
That's awesome.
Man, that's just awesome, man. So, Blaze, one thing I want to circle back to this real quick. You were talking about your childhood, and you were talking about, I mean, obviously that formed you a little bit in your experience. I asked Phil this question, and it took him a little bit of time to get to an answer, but I want to ask you the same question, man. If you could go back and tell the kid version of you something about life that you've learned in your last few decades on Earth, what would you go back and tell that kid about sickle cell disease now that he didn't know then?
It's not that bad. Embrace it. I was chosen. I feel like I was chosen. I used to look at it as a curse, but now I feel like it was who I was supposed to be. I feel like I handle it way well now. And even as a kid, I never shied away from telling people. Like I have friends or peers. No, I tell people later on down the line, or if I feel like I'm gonna be in a stronger relationship, I'll tell them. I was always a child, just tell you out the gate. I have sickle cell. Yeah, I have sickle cell. Why are you agile? I have sickle cell. So now I feel like I was chosen, and that's what I would tell him. Like it wasn't an accident. This is who you're supposed to be, and you know that's probably what it would be all I would tell him, so I could give him the confidence to go through life thinking positive instead of pessimistic. Like I would be more optimistic about me not being able to go to the military as opposed to me being pessimistic and wasting those 5 years just thinking negative, thinking sad. I would think, you know, it was God telling me no, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to go to the military and, have the kid and, cut out generic life. That's what it is. People want to go get a degree and marry and settle down, and it's just what everybody is shown on TV. That's how your life is supposed to plan out. It's supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be you have a plan and you go, but it's not that easy. I feel like you're guided through life. The no's that you think are no's are really yeses to something else.
Wow. I love that, man. That's that. I could talk to you all day, dude. I could talk to you all day. I always say this, man. We study sickle cell disease, I don't know, a day and a half in med school, maybe. We as sickle cell physicians are learning about sickle cell disease from you. I mean, we're learning from the warriors. You guys are teaching us. You guys are making us better doctors. And that's why having you on this podcast is the most meaningful thing in the world. Because to the other physicians who are listening to this, to the trainees who are listening to this, man, this is what they need to hear. They need to know sickle cell disease is it's more than a kid in pain in the hospital ward, right? It's a life, and it's a life of someone who was chosen, and it's somebody who's chosen to make a difference. And that person's name is Blaze, right? And you're one product of that. But we've seen them all. We've seen the Blazes, we've seen the Phils and the Demetriuses and the Hertzes and the Tianas and then the Shamanicas. All of you guys make us better. Thank you for that. Though, before I let you go, I'm going to have an ask of you, because it's not like we're going to let you leave without spitting a few bars for us. We know that you're extremely talented, to the point that your words move people to have you, come talk to their companies and to mobilize the sickle cell warriors. You've got power behind those words. Let's hear some of those words, man.
Want to hear like sickle cell? Want to hear like...
Give us something sickle cell. This is a sickle cell podcast, so you got to give us something sickle cell.
I can give you my poem that I wrote.
Let's do it.
It would... Now I got pain in my shoulders. Man, I got pain in my knees. You see, I got to take it easy. Can't just do what I please. I could hop in the pool and then be dying to breathe. I got goals that I set out that I may never achieve. I mean, that's just what they say when they talk my disease. But I don't pay it no mind, because it's a must I succeed. I drank them fluids. Now they scared of me now. Plus, I'm too prayed up to let it worry me now. pain management. That's just how I'm getting by. Doctor tripping because he's thinking that I'm getting high. But that ain't never the case. And these pills should be for comfort, never having to chase. You got a problem with me, doctor, tell me that to my face. I'm in a battle with myself, now tell me that ain't a race. Blaze.
Wow.
Nice.
Amazing, dude. Dude, man, I'm proud. I'm proud to be part of a community that has advocates like you. Keep doing your thing, man. And don't forget about us when you get to the top and your musical wins
Stop
awards,
it.
dude.
I'm trying to get like y'all.
Please, man. No.
Yeah, we want to be at the premiere.
We got to get you up here to Detroit. When,
Hey,
when the
man,
world
I'm
opens
down.
up, we got to get you up here to Detroit.
I'm down for whatever. I'm excited. Everybody keeps saying that when the world opens up. When is the world going to open up?
I don't know. Hopefully soon, man. Let's hope. But listen, man, keep doing your thing. Keep handling your business, man. And thank you for everything you
It
do.
was awesome. Thanks for coming on, Blaze.
We appreciate you so much.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for having me on.
Cheat Codes is brought to you by our founding sponsor, Global Blood Therapeutics. GBT is a biopharmaceutical company committed to discovering, developing, and delivering life-changing treatments that provide hope to underserved patient communities, including sickle cell disease. GBT is grounded by a mission-driven culture and built with a team of experienced and passionate people committed to making a difference in the communities it serves. Cheat Codes is grateful to GBT for sponsoring today's episode and serving the sickle cell community.
All right, Dr. Z, now I get to catch up on what's going on in social media. How's your Clubhouse and Snapchats and TikToks?
Yeah, man. So, I mean, I love being where the Warriors are. That's those are my people. I like being accessible to them, around them, learning from them. And I've been doing a lot of that. One question that seems to come up over and over again. Warriors ask me all the time. They say, Dr. Z, what do we do when we're dealing with somebody who doesn't believe we're in pain? When we're in that encounter, when we're in the middle of the encounter where somebody's treating us poorly or not believing that we're in pain, what's your advice as a physician for us as a patient in that moment to get to where we need to get? How do we behave? What do we say? What are the buzzwords? That question bothers me a lot. I always struggle answering that question. And the fact that we are having patients with a catastrophic, debilitating disease that's causing pain from a deprivation of oxygen to tissues, literally spending their time on social media trying to curate their approach to accessing pain medicine or equitable treatment in the hospital is disgusting. And I honestly don't know, Dr. Mike, how to answer this question. I think about it often. I mean, I've had conversations around, hey, maybe you talk about the NHLBI guidelines. Go in armed with the 2014 guidelines that say that after, from the time you hit the hospital, 60 minutes to your first antibiotic, your first pain medicine, depending on what you're there for. If they can't get an IV, give it to them sub-Q. But 60 minutes. We know labs don't matter. We know labs don't show pain. We know vitals don't show pain. But the Warriors will respond and say, yeah, sometimes when we try that, physicians get more upset because they think we're being know-it-alls or that we're attacking them and their plan. This is a problem. And I really don't know how to advise people properly on this issue. I think we certainly have a problem in medicine where we are we talk at patients, not necessarily to patients. And I think we may have, different priorities on on how to care for patients in the moment compared to what the patients need. And I don't know, I think that this is something that we need to thoughtfully approach and, give the warriors some resources and how doctors think and how to unlock that and how to get what you need from a physician in that type of a encounter.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a thing that, that you have to deal with. It pisses you off. You would hope that our colleagues don't come with biases against our patients, that they know the proper way to treat a patient with sickle cell who's having a pain crisis, and they can act on it quickly. And, that's one of the reasons we do this podcast and do a lot of advocacy and talk to a lot of our colleagues is to try to make sure that's the case. But we also know we live in the real world, and that's not all the case. And I think the thing that makes it really challenging is there's a lot of different reasons for that. So there are some people who are jerks, and, if they're being a jerk and you try to call them on it or even, politely help them come to the right answer, it might not be very effective because, they're not well-intentioned. I think, though, a lot of people really are well-intentioned and they're just not very knowledgeable about it. I think it's true that, if you come and say, here's the NHLBI guideline, here's how it should be done, people probably push back on that too, right? They feel like they shouldn't, but they feel like they're being questioned and called out for not knowing something, and maybe they have a negative reaction to that. So I can see where that would be an issue. I think that the key both ways is building, sort of a personal bond. And this isn't always easy. The doctor may be in a big hurry. They always are.
ER doctors always are, by definition.
I think, giving them some insight into you can help. Like, I like to knit, and I was doing my knitting, and then I had this pain, and I've had pain like this before, and Dr. Z's my doctor, and he does a great job taking care of me, and he says when I get this pain to do this and this, and that's what I did. And I think, then that person sort of builds a bond with you. They get to know you a little bit, and they get to maybe understand that you understand what you're going through, and that you've done certain things, and I think then if you say, and when this has happened in the past, this is what's helped me. And I think the other thing is, if you can have an advocate. So I think, sometimes our folks are having trouble in an ER, and they call us, and we get on the phone and, try to be polite, but we talk to the doctor taking care of the patient and make sure the patient gets what they need. And sometimes education comes better from a colleague than it does from a patient. And I think to the extent you can have advocates, that's helpful. I think too, it's human nature when you're frustrated like that, and especially if you're in pain and you're feeling terrible, to lash out. But I think that should be a last resort. I mean, I think you really should try to also give the treating team the benefit of the doubt, and not think that they're the jerk or that they're the person you're not gonna be able to get through to. But maybe they're busy, maybe they're having a bad day, and I think if you talk to them like that, like you have empathy for what they're going, I know you're probably really busy, and I know you probably don't take care of a lot of people with sickle cell. But I think that works a lot better than shouting at people or causing problems. And sometimes you have to do that too, but I think it's better to use that as a last resort.
Yeah, and one of the things that I tell my patients is, call me, let me do the shouting. Someone's treating you poorly, you call me, and I'll call the ER and I'll yell at them.
Because almost always that doesn't work. It winds up with the doctor being mad at you not getting the care that you need, you being more aggravated, and that's usually bad for pain or whatever's going on.
I also tell them, it's important to advocate for yourself when you're well. So if you're a sickle cell patient of mine listening to this right now, I'm requesting you, when you have an experience in the ER, I want you to send letters, emails to the Children's Hospital of Michigan executives. Let them know how your experience was. Was it good? Was it bad? What happened? What went wrong? Let them know. Advocate for yourself. And say things like, what are you doing for sickle cell patients? Push them on it.
And I wouldn't discount the good part. You might think that's kind of silly to send a letter when something's good. And even when it's bad, if there's some things that were good, I think it's good to put that in too, because people love getting kudos and reinforcing that. I think if somebody does a really great job taking care of you and they get a kind letter back, boy, they're going to do that every time now, right? Because that's just so rewarding. And two, if you had a bad experience, but somebody really helped you out during that, or there were parts of it that were good, I think acknowledging that and calling that out makes your other part of the story sound more credible, and it gets accepted better. So I think both sides of the story are really important. But I think it really is important to provide feedback, because we do, as physicians, advocate for our patients. We talk to other physicians when our patients have had bad experiences. We talk to the administration when it seems like a systemic problem. But, sometimes that's just the doctors are complaining. But I think in some ways it's more powerful coming from patients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there you go, guys. A little inside look from two sickle cell docs. Take it with a grain of salt. But I hope that this offers you a little bit of insight into how doctors think. All right, Cheat Codes listeners, we are back with another segment with a word, with an important word, a word that we talk about often, something that comes up in clinic frequently. Dr. Mike, as we generally tend to do, I'm going to riddle you a little bit with this one.
All right. Let's see if I can get it.
So the word of the day today is a test. It's a test that we use to identify people who may have sickle cell disease that is causing problems with their ability to deliver blood effectively to their brain.
The SAT test?
No, it's not. That was a terrible riddle, man. This is a test that is non-invasive and allows for us to identify people who may be high risk for a permanent neurologic consequence of sickle cell disease.
Oh, you mean the stroke screen?
The stroke screen. Warriors may say the stroke screen is the artist formerly known as
TCD, or transcranial Doppler?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Another riddle solved. So the stroke screen, or the transcranial Doppler ultrasound, has been used now for a few decades. And I'm going to break it down a little bit. So trans means across, and cranial means your skull, your head. And Doppler is, there's a thing called the Doppler effect, which basically has to do with the way sound is if you're coming toward it or going away from it. So when blood's flowing, it's coming toward you or it's going away from you. And it makes a different sound on the ultrasound machine. So that's what the Doppler is. And then the ultrasound is a machine, I think it's most famous for when people are pregnant. You can get pictures of the baby from inside the womb. But it's a technique that bounces little sound waves off of things and can kind of make out the shape and density of them from what comes back. So it's kind of like what a whale does, or a dolphin. It sends out sound waves, they bounce off, and then it detects them when they come back. So this one, they measure the flow of blood in the arteries in the brain. So they have to do that, like you said, it's non-invasive, so they have to do it from outside, so it's transcranial. And what they're looking at is how fast the blood is flowing. And there's this thing called Poiseuille's law, which has to do with when blood's flowing through a tube, if you narrow the tube, then the blood has to flow a lot faster. So it's like when you pinch a hose. That's what I always tell people, when you got the hose running and you pinch it and then the water shoots out faster. That's based on Poiseuille's law. So Dr. Adams and others figured out that in sickle cell, there's a high risk of stroke, and that risk of stroke correlates with, or is proportional to, this blood flow change that they can see on the ultrasound. And we sort of cartoonishly say the reason for that is the sickle cells damage the blood vessels, and then they get narrower, like you're pinching the hose, so the blood flows faster. And if they're a certain amount of narrow, then the blood flows faster than 200 centimeters per second. And if that's the case, then you're at a very high risk of stroke. So there was a study done, now over 20 years ago, that looked at blood flow. And we talked about this study in one of our earlier episodes. It was called the STOP trial. And the STOP trial looked at using this transcranial Doppler ultrasound. In episode 2, we go into a lot of detail about this, but to identify people at high risk of stroke, and then if you were at high risk, see if transfusions could prevent the strokes. And they did. So then it became standard to do this stroke screen on everybody with SS between age 2 and 16 years once a year. So that's transcranial Doppler ultrasound, or stroke screen.
So what you're saying is, when we make people go for their transcranial Doppler or their stroke screen, we're not playing around.
No, it's important, because I think what we found, and it's borne out over time, is that if you get this screening, you can identify a stroke before it happens, before you develop neurologic deficits and have problems, and prevent it. And by doing that, we've gone from 10 or 12% of folks having a stroke to 1 or 2%. So by getting your stroke screen, you can decrease your risk of having a stroke by 80 or 90%, which is amazing. There's not very many screenings that we do that are this important and have this much impact.
Yeah, dude, that's just fantastic.
And it's like you said, it's non-invasive, so it doesn't hurt. It doesn't cause any side effects.
So Dr. Julie Cantor recently published TCD rates in a pretty big consortium of sickle cell centers across the country, and we're way below the mark of where we need to be.
Yeah, we're not doing a great job all over the country. So we got to do better. We got to get everybody to their TCD appointments.
If you're listening to this, guys, and you have a child who has SS or S beta 0 thalassemia, ask yourself right now, when is the last time they had their transcranial Doppler screening or their stroke screen? And if you can't remember, call your doctor and get one scheduled.
Absolutely.
Okay? All right, Dr. Mike, thank you for breaking down that really important word for us today.
Thanks, Dr. Z.
So, Dr. Mike, you broke down for us today the word transcranial Doppler stroke screen. And I hope it's okay that I do a little bit of your work in the beginning of this.
I'm always happy to have you do my work, Dr. Z.
Yeah. I'm well aware. No, I'm joking. So what I think that the study we want to talk about today is one that has pretty important implications. And, this comes out of Cincinnati. And Cincinnati Children's Hospital has a legendary sickle cell doctor who hopefully we can eventually get on the podcast, named Russell Ware. We had Pat McGann on, who's a Russell Ware disciple, but we haven't been able to get Dr. Russell Ware on yet, mostly because we haven't asked, actually. But the context here is looking at patients who have shown themselves to be high risk for stroke, using that stroke screen, using that transcranial Doppler. And historically, what would happen is, if you have a child who has an abnormal stroke screen, that child would end up on blood transfusions. And that child would stay on blood transfusions. But Dr. Callahan, recently we've been having different conversations, and tell us a little bit about the Twitch trial.
Yeah, so like you said, Dr. Z, if you have an abnormal stroke screen, because of the STOP trial, we would say you should go on transfusions that can prevent 90% of strokes. And because of STOP 2, we would say you need to be on that indefinitely, maybe your whole life, because we know if we stop it, your risk of stroke goes back up. this group led by Russell Ware, and we were a part of it here as well. Dr. Sarnaik from our group's an author on this study, and really nationwide group of experts in sickle cell and patients from all over the country were involved in this study called Twitch. Dr. Ware likes to put itch at the end of all of his studies.
Yeah.
But this one's called hydroxycarbamide, which again is another name for hydroxyurea, versus chronic transfusions for maintenance of transcranial Doppler flow velocities in children with sickle cell anemia. TCD with transfusions changing to hydroxyurea, Twitch, a multi-center open-label phase 3 non-inferiority study. So I'm going to break that down. So this was a study to see if you could come off those transfusions. But we knew you couldn't just come off of those transfusions. You needed something that was going to replace the transfusions and protect you. And so hydroxyurea has been, the best drug we had for a long time for a lot of things. And so the question was, could you switch from transfusions to hydroxyurea and still prevent your strokes? And so this was an open label study, which you kind of have to do in this case. That means that the people in the study know what they're getting. It's hard to fake transfusions or have people take placebo pills and get fake transfusions. So everybody kind of had to know what they were getting. And it's a phase 3 study. So this was a big study to really answer the question. And it's a non-inferiority study. So sometimes when you're testing out a new treatment, like in this case, hydroxyurea to prevent strokes, you want to see, is it better? And sometimes you just say, well, you know what? If it's not worse, then we would use it because it's a pill. It gets you off transfusions. If it's not worse than transfusions, then we'd use it. And you design the study a little bit differently. So this one was designed to really show that hydroxyurea wasn't worse at preventing strokes than blood transfusions. So this was done at 26 centers throughout the U.S. and Canada. And the people who were enrolled on the study had to be 4 to 16 years old. They had to have a positive stroke screen in the past, more than 200 centimeters per second, that got them onto a transfusion protocol, but not severe vasculopathy. So what that means is, sometimes people who have abnormal stroke screens, it's because the blood vessels in their head have been really severely damaged, and you might see that on an MRI. And so they didn't want patients with really severe blood vessel problems to go on this. Then the 160 patients enrolled and 121 were eligible and got screened and randomized. So they basically flipped a coin and you either stayed on your transfusions or you went on to hydroxyurea. And the way they did this was really focused a lot on safety. So they didn't just stop your transfusions and start the hydroxyurea. They started the hydroxyurea while you were on the transfusions and then escalated the dose over time to maximum tolerated dose. So that's, by monitoring the blood counts, we can make sure you're not having too much suppression of your white blood cells from hydroxyurea, but keep going up on the dose to get more fetal hemoglobin, more beneficial effect, until we get to that spot where you're at, having problems or at the max dose. So they did that, and then there was a point when the fetal hemoglobin got up to a level that they felt was safe to come off the transfusions, when then the transfusions stopped. And then this is a really cool thing with this study. Transfusions are great at preventing strokes, but they have a lot of issues that come with them. So you can have antibodies against blood. People worry a lot about blood transmitted infections, although they're quite rare. But there are a lot of other things that can happen. You can have transfusion reactions. And one of the biggest problems is you get iron, a lot of iron, and it can accumulate and you can have problems related to having too much iron in your body. It can damage your liver, especially. It can affect your endocrine organs like your thyroid gland and your pancreas, and it can affect your heart. And so a lot of times we have people on medicines to try to keep that iron as low as possible, but it's not always possible to keep it that low, and you can have problems from the iron. So one nice thing about going on this hydroxyurea is they could draw off blood and get rid of iron. And by doing that, they were able to get people's iron levels down as well. So the outcomes that they were looking at from the study were what happened to the transcranial Doppler velocities in patients when they were on the transfusions or the hydroxyurea. Now you might say, well, what we really want to know is, did the hydroxyurea prevent strokes? But it's hard to do that because you'd have to follow a lot of patients for a really long time to get enough strokes in one arm and another arm, and you don't really want to have a study where you're letting people have strokes. So they decided to use a proxy measure, a test that they know correlates with the risk of having a stroke. So they measured these transcranial Doppler velocities in the patients on the transfusions and on the hydroxyurea during and at the end of the study. And what they found was that this worked very nicely. So the 121 patients, 61 of them stayed on their transfusions, 60 of them switched to the hydroxyurea. And what they found was that the velocities were actually lower in the hydroxyurea. So the hydroxyurea seemed to be working actually a little bit better at improving the blood flow in the study. And actually, even though it wasn't designed to see superiority, it showed superiority. There were no strokes in either group. There were 3 transient events, so not full strokes, but like minor reversible strokes that occurred in each group. So the same in both groups. So no difference there. And they did MRIs at the end of the study too, and at the beginning, and they didn't find any changes related to new strokes in either group. There were adverse events in 9 patients for hydroxyurea and in 6 patients for the transfusions. The most common events in both groups were pain episodes, and there were 11 pain episodes in the hydroxyurea group and 3 in the transfusion group. So it does look like you do have a little bit more pain if you switch to the hydroxyurea than you would if you stayed on your transfusions. But both groups, the rate of pain was actually lower than you might expect in a general sickle cell population. They were also able to dramatically lower the iron levels in the patients on the hydroxyurea. So the punchline is that it is safe, not inferior, in fact, possibly superior to blood transfusions. Hydroxyurea is possibly superior in terms of improving transcranial Doppler ultrasounds and preventing stroke. It also helps with improving iron. I should say, caveat, hydroxyurea you have to take for it to work. So, we worry if patients are missing doses, if they come off the hydroxyurea, then they're at risk of stroke again. So I think that's really important to note that, this might not be for everybody. Also, maybe a little bit more pain episodes. So this was published in the Lancet in February of 2016. Yeah, Lancet's a great journal. And since that time, we have had many patients in our center go through this protocol in regular practice and move on to hydroxyurea. And, many have been successful and are very happy to be off of transfusions, and they just come for their regular hydroxyurea visits, and they're doing very well. We've definitely had some people who had trouble taking their hydroxyurea all the time or getting their fetal hemoglobin levels up to a good level to stay on the therapy, and have switched back to transfusions or never really made it off of the transfusions. But this is another option. So I think it was a great study, a great idea, a great study, and another good option to prevent strokes for our folks who have abnormal stroke screens.
Dr. Mike, I appreciate you breaking that study down for us yet again. And thank you for making this tangible, digestible, and accessible for us and the Warriors. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Dr. Z.
All right, Dr. Callahan.
Another good one.
There goes another episode of Cheat Codes.
I love the poetry. We don't have enough poetry on Cheat Codes, Dr. Z.
Man, I'm telling you, that's just a different kind of talent. And, I'm thrilled that we were able to have Blaze on and have him share his experience, a unique experience. But man, I feel empowered after hearing him speak today.
Me too. I'm looking forward to the musical.
Yeah, same. We covered a lot of good stuff, man. Transcranial Dopplers, Twitch, Russellware. And we talked a little bit about navigating the ER. So all in all, I think this was a nice little discussion. Yeah, jam-packed. So let's give the Warrior some of their time back. If you're a Warrior listening to this and you think there's somebody who could benefit from hearing what was discussed on this podcast, share it with them. Like and subscribe. Follow me at Dr. Z Sickle Cell, and follow Dr. C at
and me at Imagineer.
Follow at Cheat Codes Pod on Instagram, and keep living well with sickle cell. That's all we've got for you this week. We'll catch you next time. Peace.